Welcome to Alliance RF, guys. We are here to give you information about the real estate market. Today, we're going to focus on the state of Maryland, but we're going to do videos in the future that focuses at the national level. We want to give you guys a feel of what the housing market is like in the state of Maryland, keeping in mind that the state of Maryland housing market is actually pretty representative of the overall housing market. So even though this is Maryland data, you can use it at the national level. My name's Ian. My partner with me is Mr. Brian Shanker. He's a local realtor, and I'll let him talk a little more about himself, and then we'll dive right into what that market is looking like in Maryland.
Hi, everybody. So like Ian mentioned, we're going to talk about the Maryland data right now, and we're in a unique position where we're located. The DC area is kind of representative of the overall national data set. We'll go into the national data a little bit more detail at some other time, but today we're focusing on Maryland. So we're looking year over year from March of 2020 to March of 2021. The sold units is up 11.4% from last year to this year at that number, and the number is 7,964 for March of sold units. And we're kind of just, we're still in an inventory constrained market. So that number's really not moved very much from last year. We've been in an inventory constrained market for several years now. Ian, what are your thoughts on that?
I see a lot of home buyers are, in my opinion, having a harder time finding properties to purchase. And so maybe it's potentially we have more buyers in the market than we did last year. But we'll talk a little more about how, the number of units sold compared to last year, how that's been impacted by pricing and the average amount of people that are actually looking for homes.
Right. So the next data point that I'm going to talk about is the average price. So from March of last year, the average sales price was $363,000 roughly, and it's increased 11% to this year. So we're at $404,606. So we've gone up 11%. That's pretty significant increase year over year, 11% gain on this average sales price.
Now, what is really intriguing to me about this data point when we talk about increased sales price, and we're still seeing a lot of buyers coming into the market. I'm always surprised after going through COVID that, and with the job numbers where they are, after going through COVID, we still have a huge amount of people who are buying at the increased price and multiple offers, several offers on the property. I think, I don't know if you caught, there was a video that went very popular on YouTube recently. There was a house that was listed in the DC metro area. House was listed, I can't remember the exact price, but 88 offers roughly on that DC property. 88 offers. Now, this is a property that needed a lot of work, but it was still priced competitively. And, went clearly 100,000 plus over the listing price. So it always makes me raise the question, where's the money coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's really crazy out there with the buyers offering way above list price, and they're coming out of pocket. Whatever that appraised value comes in at, they're not going to give a loan based on the sales price. It's going to be based on the appraised value. So they're coming out of pocket. That's cash that they're pulling from maybe retirement funds. Maybe they're borrowing it from family members. Maybe they've been penny pinchers and have been saving up for this.
That is true. And a lot of people ask now the question, and we'll do a video coming up about, are we in a housing bubble? And I tend to think about that a lot, but as you and I have been having, I think, the past week of discussions about just the amount of work it takes to get a loan versus the housing crash and the housing bubble. I mean, just even in the refinance process, I think I called you several times ready to give up because the amount of paperwork that was being requested. So that tells me that the banks are actually qualifying and making sure that the individuals that are getting these loans can afford it and, also have reserves after making the purchase. So the question of, are we in a housing bubble with these prices? I don't know. I generally don't think so, just because of the amount of work it takes to actually qualify for a loan. So will the housing prices keep going up? What's your 2 cents on that?
Well, they're going to keep going up at least in the short term, maybe into next year and the following year. But as we all know, once something goes up, it's got to eventually come back down. Will that be a bubble like we saw in years previous? I don't know, but we'll talk about that more in another podcast.
Great.
All right, so let's get back to some of these data points here. So year over year, from March of last year, the pending units, which is properties that are under contract, was at 7,600, a little bit over that. And for March of this year, that was a 35% increase to 10,337 units. So there's a lot of properties going under contract. They, like you were mentioning, there's a lot of buyers out there and they're going under contract. The properties are going under contract quickly.
I think it's pretty competitive out there, and I'm seeing a lot of buyer frustration. But the good thing that I'm not seeing is that even with the buyer frustration, I don't generally get the sense that a lot of buyers are getting tired. They want a house, they want to purchase a house, and it's sort of that millennial generation coming right along, and they're at that stage of life. So I don't think we'll have a housing bubble, and I don't think we're going to have a huge housing decline. But I agree with you. The prices are going to be sustainable for at least in the immediate short term.
So here's the next data point is pretty interesting. Looking at the numbers, so we saw the pending units last year at 7,600, and then under the pending units this year at over 10,000. For active units, it's just the opposite is happening. Last year we had 19,000 units. Units are the houses, and this year 6,200. So the numbers have flipped from that last data point. So pending units the pending units 76 versus 10,000 year over year, and then active units 19,000 versus 6,200. So we had 19,000 active units last year at this time, and only 6,200 this time at this March of this year.
So this is a good data point for buyers to see and hopefully understand what's happening in the market. And while it is frustrating, they have to understand you're competing, at least by March of this year, in the state of Maryland. And we'll talk a little more about DC metro area in another podcast and then national level. But in the state of Maryland, your buyers are competing against only 6,200 homes roughly.
Yeah.
And so it's a great market if you're a seller. I can already see a trend that from last year to this year, sellers are also recognizing that they can get top dollar. While we don't have a huge inventory level, they're starting to realize they can get top dollar, and we are seeing more of the inventory on the market. So active units being roughly around 19,061. So yeah, it's good for sellers, but very challenging for buyers right now.
Yep. So that kind of gives you the gauge that we go by as far as what type of market we're in is based on the months of inventory. So a 6-month inventory level is considered a balanced market. It's not leaning towards sellers, it's not leaning towards buyers. So last year, even, we had only 2.5 months of inventory. So pretty strong sellers market, we thought at that time. Currently, we have less than 1 month worth of inventory. So that's really, really slanted towards the sellers. It's a very, very strong sellers market based on the months of inventory level at only 0.8%, 0.8 months of inventory.
So the 6 months of inventory is how long it would take to basically exhaust the market of the amount of inventory in the market. And
Correct.
You're saying that currently, last year we had 2 months. It would take 2 months to exhaust that inventory level. This year we have less than 1 month.
Correct. Less than a month's worth of inventory.
I want to be a buyer in this market, but at the same time, at these prices and at these levels, it's really challenging. Not the type to normally offer above asking asking price on a home. And and generally speaking, the homes that I'm seeing, well, I will say this and tell me if this is correct. So I'm noticing that the homes where we're seeing sort of that above 100 asking price or even 50 and greater, but generally above 100 are those higher end homes. But what are you seeing in terms of like the homes that are within that 300 to 400, that average sales price range?
They're going above list price, but not for 100,000 above.
Mhm.
So you're asking, is it the higher end homes that are going for those crazy amounts above? In some respect, yes. But I had a listing that was listed at under 500,000 that went for over 500,000. So and I had a buyer that purchased in the 200 to 300 price range, and she ended up offering 15,000 over list price. So percentage wise, you're seeing, significant increase above list price, but the dollar amounts, it's relative.
And this week I called you just because, we were on our real estate call, and I shared with you a story about somebody who went in with an escalation clause.
Yeah.
And so actually before I get into the story, let me just take a moment and allow you to tell everybody what an escalation clause is in a contract.
So the escalation clause allows a buyer to offer more than list price with a little bit of protection. So you have what's called the escalating factor, which is the amount of money that the escalation will go above the next highest offer. And then you can set a maximum on that. So for instance, if you are only comfortable going 20,000 above list price, your escalation clause would be, maybe a $2,000 escalating factor above the next highest offer to a maximum of 20,000 above the list price. So the buyer can be competitive without, going crazy on that number. They can still keep that number to a comfortable value.
Thank you for that. So, I was very shocked when I heard on the real estate call, there was a buyer who had an escalation clause up to a max of 100,000. And while they did reach the top three of best offers, they still lost out on that property because they went above their max escalation clause. And that to me was still very indicative of this housing market and just how intense and just astounding it is that we have all these buyers that are really bidding these prices higher. I am curious to see what's going to happen in terms of bidding above list price as we see the interest rate start to adjust and that monthly payment starts to look different to buyers. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out if you're able to keep track of that property, how much over it actually went. All right, so back to the data. Days on market. Days on the market is calculated from the day the property goes on the market as active and then goes under contract. So the days on market doesn't count while it's under contract. So if it takes 45 days to close, once it goes under contract, those days don't count against the property. So last year, median days on the market was 18 days. This year, 7 days. 7 days for the median. That's pretty quick.
I can attest to that. We have a house we put on the market. I can't remember. We put the house on the market. It was on a Friday,
Thursday or Friday.
Thursday or Friday, and you wanted all offers by. Initially, you wanted all offers by the weekend. I said that's not long enough, but so we extended it to the following Thursday, 7 days actually, and we had several offers on that house. So that is a testament to, yes, the average days is really gone down just because of the inventory shortage and the amount of buyers that are actually bidding up these homes. One question I do have, a lot of times realtors will always put offers due by some date, usually 3 to 7 days out. I want to be clear, is it a recommendation that buyers should wait until the final day to submit their offer, or should they submit that offer right away?
That's a good question. In a couple instances on my listings, one in particular, the one that went for over 500,000, that was listed just below 500,000. We ended up going with the very first offer. So we put that house on the market, I think on a Wednesday. We had a showing that morning at 9:30. That buyer put in an offer, and we were waiting to collect the offers over the weekend, and we went over everything, and they picked on the following Monday. So that buyer hung in there that whole time. You're running the risk as the seller of that buyer seeing something else come on the market that they like better and pulling out. So there is some risk there to the seller. To the buyer, in some cases, you might think to yourself, well, if they put the offer in right away, then the listing agent can use that and shop that offer to other people. So if other people are saying, hey, I'm going to submit an offer, do you have something? We can't give details about that offer. The buyer's agents will try to get that information. And as the listing agent, you shouldn't give that information. You should just tell them, put their best foot forward, and the seller's going to look at all the offers and choose. So to answer your question, I don't know if it's going to benefit the buyer by submitting it right away, other than they're going to be feeling anxious, waiting for a reply. The sellers are going to want to look at all the offers, and they're going to want to pick the best one.
I look at it from the perspective of always submit the offer right away. And the reason why I say that is because you never know when that seller, because even though we say all offers due by X, Y, and XY date, there isn't really anything that stops the seller once they've gotten a strong offer and they're pretty confident on that offer. Let's say they get a cash offer that's very high, and subsequently they don't think they'll get anything better than that. They can actually accept that offer and close it out, right?
They can. Now that puts the listing agent in a little bit of hot water, because if they're putting it out there that offers are going to be an offer deadline and then of such and such, and then they're going to pick something, then we got to go back out there and let people know, hey, we're shortening that time frame now, and people are going to get upset. They're going to miss out on that opportunity. Maybe their agent was planning on doing it the day before the deadline because they were going out of town or something, or just for whatever, or maybe even the buyer. Maybe the buyer's out of town, and but yeah.
I mean, my advice to people: generally get your offers in as soon as you can. And if you like the house enough, wait out until the deadline, but at least your offer is in the hands of the seller, and it gives them an opportunity to see your offer first. All right.
So we got a couple more things that I wanted to bring up. One is new listings in the month of March. So last year, there were 10,441 new listings in that particular month. And this year, pretty close. It's only a 5% increase, 10,970 new listings. So, we're holding steady, pretty much the same amount of listings coming on the market for the month of March, year over year.
I would generally say that's a good stat, but seeing that our inventory levels are still about less than 1 month,
they're going
work to do.
They're going under contract faster, as fast as they come on the market.
Fast.
So there's one other thing I wanted to point out as far as the data goes, and that's the average price from January of this year to March. It has increased 5.4% from January. So it's 387,000 in January, and the average price is currently just over 404,000. That's a pretty significant increase. So actually, it's just under 5% increase from January to now. That's a pretty good return on investment there.
It is a pretty good return on investment, especially if buyers are still overbidding.
Right.
that list price. So if you own a home and you're thinking about selling, this is your opportunity to jump into the market now and get and really command the price that you're looking for.
All right. So Ian, I think that's it for today. Everybody out there, please be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, click on the bell so anytime we upload a new video, you'll be notified. And please come back and share your thoughts on what we talked about in the comments section below.